long-awaited return to the First Team Fantasy podcast, our first episode with our faces in it. For the 2024 season, we're going to come in a little bit spicy. We're going to go over our booms and our busts. And when we say boom and bust, we don't necessarily mean the guys that we have as busts are going to be terrible. Just maybe at the ADP they're being selected, there's more value you could get a little later down the line. I'll start it off with my QB boom, and it's going to be Jordan Love. He's going right around the QB 9 or QB 10, despite finishing in the top 6 fantasy rankings last year for QBs. And he has all his weapons returning, and all his weapons are very young, realistically only getting better. You have Jaden Reed. You have Christian Watson, who they're hoping is more healthy this season. You have Romeo Doubs, Dontavion Wicks. You have some young tight ends. And then you make an upgrade at running back, and you bring in Josh Jacobs, who is an absolute dog. It's just, Jordan Love is primed to have a solid fantasy season yet again. And when you can grab him fairly late in the draft and kind of bolster the rest of your roster, it's just a pick I really, really like to make. So that's my boom. Schiff, who do you got as your boom quarterback?
I really wanted to go Kyler Murray here, but I felt like that was just a little too obvious, and a lot of people have been going with and saying Kyler Murray. So I was going to go with a guy who is right around the same, like going pretty much right with Jordan Love, and that's Dak Prescott.
Mm-hmm.
Um, excuse me, last year he finished as the QB3. They didn't necessarily get any worse. While
Yeah.
they didn't get any better. They didn't add anybody to the receiving room. They have like all the same guys that led them to the, albeit regular season success, but that's what we want in fantasy, right?
Yeah.
And CeeDee Lamb just got paid. He's going to be happy. I mean, I just don't see really why I draft a guy like Anthony Richardson, who you haven't really seen it from. And I get it, like, CJ Stroud, the Texans are new and exciting and everything, but just the draft capital you're spending on him when I believe you
Mm-hmm.
can get like the same exact thing that we've seen out of Dak Prescott way farther down the draft, like rounds 8, 9, 10.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree with it. And again, I said this was going to be a spicy episode. The bust I have listed, and again, he's going to have a good fantasy season, but Josh Allen, drafting him in the third round is not something I completely would recommend. You lose Stefon Diggs, you lose Gabe Davis, and Keon Coleman, they do spend draft capital on him. They bring in Curtis Samuel, who Schiff mentioned in the previous episode is already injured. Um, and then you have Khalil Shakir. It's just drafting him in the third round and losing out on a potential wide receiver two, guys of the likes of Ayuk, a Cooper Kupp, just guys in that area is just hard to justify. When Josh Allen does have crazy rushing upside, I just don't think the Bills' offense is going to be as explosive. I kind of compare it to what the Chiefs went through when they were kind of rebuilding that offense and leaned a little bit more on their defense. I think the Bills are just inevitably going to have to do that to be contenders in this season.
Yeah, no, I definitely believe you. And it's just tough to, the guy's going as the quarterback one.
Mm-hmm.
Not saying he's not going, like you said, to finish well, but it's just hard to draft him there when you lose your top two options
Mm-hmm.
and you can't just. And it's, I think, the way the guy runs, you can't
Yeah.
look at that and say like he can just keep doing this forever. There's no way. Like I'm pretty sure he said he wants to run less. So that, I don't know. I completely agree with you there, and that's why like mine kind of is along the same lines with Jalen Hurts.
Yeah.
A lot of people aren't going to want to hear that. And while I think the Eagles' offense could be very good, I just think as far as Jalen Hurts, a really big thing about the Eagles' offense itself is they lost Jason Kelsey
Mm-hmm.
this offseason. He retired. So what a lot of people might not have known is Jason Kelsey was the one who made all the calls at the line.
Yep.
All, when he'd see the changes on the defense, all the audibles, he was the one in control, not Jalen Hurts.
Yeah.
So that's a whole new responsibility for the signal caller. And, just that on top of not having your Hall of Fame center anymore, it's kind of a big thing. But just to go along with that, I just think the upgrade at running back with Saquon Barkley, the loss of Jason Kelsey might mean just, they risk it a little bit less at the line of scrimmage with Jalen Hurts. They might put the ball in Saquon's hands a little bit more. So we saw Jalen Hurts have 15 touchdowns on the ground last year, and DeAndre Swift was in single digits. I think it was like 7. I
Mm-hmm.
could very easily see that be flipped. And like I said, the Eagles offense could still be very good. Jalen Hurts could get it done through the air. I just don't see him having I double digit touchdowns on the ground this year.
Yeah.
They have a very good running back. They paid him. Why not use him?
Yeah.
So that's just kind of where I stand with that. Still think he's going to be great. It's the guys they're going. The thing about it is the value. The other guys that are going around
Mm-hmm.
them. Instead of spending that pick on a quarterback, there's other guys who I believe could be difference makers in other spots.
Yeah. No, and I completely agree with that. And someone for my boom at running back that you can grab fairly late in your fantasy drafts is Zamir White, somewhere in the 7th to 8th round. When Josh Jacobs went down and Zamir played those last 4 games, he had 84 carries and 13 targets through the air. So he got 97 opportunities. They let Josh Jacobs go. They brought in Alexander Madison, who is probably not going to compete very much with him for that role. And even bigger
No.
than that, to really think about, is this is going to be Zamir White's 3rd year in the league. His first 2 years, he really got nowhere on his tires. Other than those last 4 games, he didn't even have a game with double-digit carries. He just, his legs are still very fresh. He has 2 years NFL experience, learning the game, seeing it at a higher level. Zamir White, for as late as you're getting him, and Antonio Pierce runs the ball like no other. He's going to get 15, 20 carries a game. He's just someone for where you're getting him around a Javonte Williams, guys like that. Zamir's going to get a lot of workload. And that alone just makes him a potential boom.
I mean, he could be like, what was it, 2022 Jamal Williams on the Lions?
Yeah, no.
Yeah, obviously
Yes.
not as many touchdowns, but
Yeah.
just like the amount of volume could be something similar to that.
Yeah.
Because we know Alexander Madison had an opportunity to get it done as an RB1 in Minnesota. We see that Ty Chandler is still in Minnesota and Alexander Madison is not.
Mm-hmm.
They, in fact, went out and got Aaron Jones from Green Bay. That's how much they believed in Madison.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think my RB that I really love this year is, in fact, Josh Jacobs,
Mm-hmm.
guy that left Las Vegas and went to Green Bay. And for me, it really just has to do with the opportunity. I talked about it in our mock draft. It's just hard to look at that situation with how good, a lot of us do think the Green Bay Packers are going to be a very good team. We saw what they did at
Mm-hmm.
the end of last year, what they did to the Cowboys in the playoffs.
Yeah.
And let's be real, they should have beat the Niners, and been playing the Lions in that NFC Championship game. But I think, along with a lot of other people, that they are that good and they're going to build upon that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they went out and got a running back who's capable of handling that workload. When it comes to, a lot of our problem the past few years with the Green Bay running back experience is Matt LaFleur loves the committee. He has said like he doesn't like having a workhorse back. Now he's faced with the dilemma of not having an option.
Yeah.
So when it comes down to those goal line sets, if the man wants to win football games, he's not going to take out Josh Jacobs and put in Emmanuel Wilson.
Yeah.
So that's going. I mean, it's just the opportunities that Josh Jacobs is going to get. For me, it's putting him like a little bit above, you know, Kyron and
I
with
could see
the
it.
Samaje P. Ryan signing, just like, it's really close with Pacheco, just because it's like they're not going to take him off the field on third down for Emmanuel Wilson. Like, I don't know. I just see him as like a very much true workhorse back now.
And that's what he's
With,
been his whole career. Josh Jacobs is used to it. He's
and it's like,
absolutely
that's the
used to
thing,
it.
like with the Raiders last year, like, they weren't that good. And the Packers, I just believe they're going to have a
Oh
lot more
yeah.
scoring opportunity than,
No,
so,
I completely
yeah.
agree with that. And the bust. I am going to go big, and I have Devon Achane only because taking a guy in the second round, again, we don't have some extensive game footage on him other than last season, obviously. But he did miss 5 games in his rookie season. He came out very hot his you know, first half of the season. The second half, after he missed those 5 games, he came back and he only finished above 13.5 fantasy points twice in the final 6 games. Again, Raheem Mostert gets older. Devon Achane only comes a little more into his prime. But just how Mike McDaniel likes running that offense, I kind of see Mostert being involved a little more than I would like for drafting someone in the second round as high as you're drafting Achane. But strictly on this only because of slight injury concern and potential of Mostert still getting more than he probably deserves. But we will see. It's just something to monitor when I'm taking him above guys like Josh Jacobs that are going to just get insane carries, touches, receptions through the air. It's just something to be a little cautious of. But that was my bust. Schiff, I think you have a pretty good bust selection here.
Well, I had a few that I was really concerned with, and it was like Aaron Jones,
Mm-hmm.
DeAndre Swift, and I think honestly I'm gonna just go with Joe Mixon. And I don't think that he is going to be a bust per se. But when I look at who he is going around and some of the people being taken, and obviously it depends on who you're drafting with. So just some of the guys in some of the recent mock drafts I've done that have gone around him, just Devontae Smith, Trey McBride, Malik Neighbors, Alvin Kamara, DK
Mm-hmm.
Metcalf, Amari Cooper, Tank Dell, all guys that I would prefer having over Joe Mixon. I understand that he offers that cheap volume and the possibility of, getting those targets out of the backfield. But when you look at how dynamic the receiver room is in Houston, and we look at CJ Stroud's just like, I just don't believe that he's going to get a whole bunch of little dump off passes. I mean, he might get a lot of cheap volume. He might get some goal line work, but at the same time, not some goal line work. He'll probably get a good amount of it and be a pretty decent, maybe high end RB2. I just think guys like Trey McBride, who are going around him,
Mm-hmm.
has the he has the path to being the tight end one.
Yeah.
Malik Neighbors doesn't necessarily have the path to being the wide receiver one, but I mean, I think he has the talent to finish as a top 10, top 5 wide receiver.
Yeah.
And it's like if I'm just drafting to win championships, I'm not drafting to make the playoffs, get You know what I mean? So it's like
Hmm.
rather than taking the safe route of Joe Mixon, I like the upside of the guys around him. So
Yeah.
not that I think he's a bust per se, just where you'd be taking him in like the fourth, fifth. There's a lot of guys there that I really like a lot more.
Yeah. And speaking of guys that, I mean, I really like this year, for my wide receiver, I have to go Scary Terry. I just, you get rid of Jahan Dotson, and it's not that Dotson was someone that's really going to, take a bunch of targets from Scary Terry, but just how the Commanders have built their offense. You draft Jaden Daniels super early. He seems like he has the tools to be the quarterback of the future there. He's one of the older quarterbacks as well coming out of college, so he should be one of the most mature and ready for the NFL of the rookie quarterbacks. And Scary Terry's caught at least 80 receptions and 1,000 yards the past 4 years, every single year. He only had 4 touchdowns last year. He's one of those guys where, and it's half because the Commanders don't score too much, but if Terry can finish with 7 to 8 touchdowns on a low end, if he can finish 7 or 8 touchdowns, you're looking 24 to 30 more fantasy points to finish the year. And with that finish, it kind of bumps him up a tier. And I believe he very well could finish with that. He's going to be hyper targeted there. He's a guy that I like, especially at the value you're getting him. He goes right around guys like a Tank Dell, who I love Tank Dell, but you do have Stefon Diggs, Dalton Schultz, now Joe Mixon, Nico Collins, the list goes on. Scary Terry has no one there with him. He's going to be the only real threat through the air for the Commanders, so I just love the value we're getting with him.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Just where he's going, like there are a lot of receivers going in these rounds, the later, like 5, 6,
Mm-hmm.
some 7 that I really do like. One of those guys being my was in consideration for my fantasy MVP.
And it's fair.
Uh, and we talked about it. Look, we are not here to judge the character of a player. We're
Mm-hmm.
purely reaping the benefits of what they do on the field.
Yep.
So that guy for me is Rashee Rice. And I get that he's made some poor life choices, but yeah, like I said, I'm not here to judge that. I'm here to win fantasy championships, and that's what I
Yep.
believe he's going to do for people. He's just going in, anywhere from rounds like 6 to 8,
Yep.
and I don't hate, going after him in like the 5th round. He's going to be the number one wide receiver in the Chiefs offense, which throughout the offseason they've said that he is that guy. It's like every year it's like, oh, Travis Kelce's getting older. Oh, he's still Travis Kelce. And it's like just being realistic, like it's not that he's going to drop off or anything, but Rashee Rice is, I mean, just looking at, like we talked about the positive regression with the Chiefs offense, why can both of them not be productive?
Yeah.
We saw how productive that offense was with both Tyreek and Travis Kelce.
Yeah.
I just believe Rashee Rice is that talented. I believe that offense is that good. I mean, obviously they're that good,
Yeah.
but I don't know, just where he's going, and it's obvious why, because of all the issues with the looming suspension, whether or not it was going to happen. We know now it's probably not going to happen this season. So, like I said, I mean, I'm comfortable taking him in like the 5th round, and he's going in like the 7th and 8th of a lot of drafts.
Yeah. No, in the whole Travis Kelsey, from someone that drafted him first round last year, he is human. He can get injured. He is getting older. Slowly but surely, Travis Kelsey will have a gradual decline. He's still one of the best tight ends in the league, but Father Time is undefeated. He is getting older. It's just a fact.
It is.
Yeah. And again, swinging hard. It's funny, my two busts are the two guys that were probably like the top waiver wire pickups of this past season, but they went from waiver wire pickups to guys that we have to spend a top 2 fantasy pick on. And this one scares me even more than Achane, only because he's going even earlier. But I have Puka Nacua. I have one league, a 12-man league, and again, this guy reached for him, but a guy picked him 7th in a 12-man league. And I had another one that, and it's right where he's projected ADP, took him 2nd round with the 9th overall pick over Garrett Wilson. These are just scary things for me because Puka came out the gates extremely hot. He had 4 100-plus yard games his first 7 games, and then he had 3 the final 10. Now, albeit Matt Stafford was getting banged up, Cooper Kupp came back, they were differing things. A healthy Cooper Kupp spells trouble for Puka Nacua because no matter how good Puka is, Matt Stafford and Cooper Kupp have a very solid connection. And it's one of those where it's only how high Puka Nacua is getting drafted. I think he's going to have a great season, but if I'm looking at him and I'm looking at Garrett Wilson, guys like that, I have to lean Garrett Wilson there. So it's the only reason for Puka. Again, I think he's going to have a great year, but when he's going 2 whole rounds ahead of Cooper Kupp, I'd rather take Cooper Kupp in the 4th and grab Garrett Wilson in the 2nd and pair those 2 together and potentially get very similar production that I'm going to get from Puka. So.
All right. Yeah, and my guy is somewhat a bit older on the age scale. Nah, it's Stefon Diggs. I mean, another one. I was really thinking about Devontae Adams, but it just Stefon Diggs for me. He's just going, ahead of like Cooper Kupp.
Mm-hmm.
He's going right behind Nico Collins. He's going ahead of Tank Dell. And just my problem with Stefon Diggs is he was kind of falling off around the end of last season. Granted, he hasn't finished strong the last couple of seasons. He always gets off to a hot start, which he very well may do. And there's nothing to say that the Texans offense can't support 3 wide receivers. We saw great games out of Noah Brown last season. I just don't see consistency out of him.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas even with Tank Dell, I mean, if you actually look into the relationship between CJ Stroud and Tank Dell, Stroud wanted the Texans to draft Dell. Those two are like best friends on and off the field. They have a great rapport on and off the field. I mean, CJ and Nico already have a great rapport on and off the field. Stefon
Mm-hmm.
is stepping into, you know, something completely new. I mean, he's been playing in Buffalo, and now he's going to Houston, Texas.
Yeah.
It's way different. So I don't know. I mean, I think he can still be good. He can still be productive. Just when he's going around and ahead of guys like Debo, Cooper Kupp, James Cook, Rachaad White, Trey McBride, I can't do it. I can't pull the trigger.
Yeah, and it's crazy too because yes, they will be able to support 3 wide receivers to be viable in fantasy. But have we ever seen 3 fantasy receivers from the same team all going in the top 5 rounds and all producing like top 5 round draft? It's just tough to imagine them all holding their value. And I agree with you. If one of them's not going to be the one to hold the value, it's probably going to be the oldest one, the one that's new to the system, the one he has the least rapport with. It's just, I mean, we even saw Stefon towards the end of last season in Buffalo start to struggle a little bit to have monster games. It's just, I completely agree with it.
Yeah.
Someone that has 2 monster seasons since coming to Jacksonville is Evan Engram. He's had his 2 best fantasy seasons. He finished as the tight end.
Tight ends.
Yes. Did I say wide receiver?
No, you just said you didn't say we transitioned to the tight ends. I was
Yeah,
like,
we
what
we
is he
tra-
talking about?
yeah, we transitioned to tight ends. My apologies. But Evan
No, you're
Ingram,
good.
yeah, his
We're
two
back,
best.
guys.
Yeah, I mean, we got to knock the rust off a little bit. But he's had his two best fantasy
Oh
seasons,
yeah.
both top 5 finishes. He's being targeted as right around the tight end 8 or 9. He was targeted 143 times this past season. You bring in Gabe Davis, so now you're looking at Christian Kirk, Brian Thomas, Gabe Davis. Gabe Davis isn't a guy that's going to have hyper targets. We all know that. Brian Thomas is a rookie. He's very talented, but he's a rookie. Christian Kirk has had his injury problems. And when all else fails, who has Trevor Lawrence looked to? It's been Evan Ingram. And he only had 4 touchdowns this past season. And over 110 receptions, over 140 targets. He's a guy where, again, if he can increase those touchdowns to 5 or 6, if he finished top 3 or top 4 for the tight ends, I wouldn't be surprised. I really wouldn't. He's had 2
Well,
straight
no, he
seasons
finished
doing
as
it.
tight end 2 last season,
It's
and they didn't really. They got rid of Calvin Ridley, and yeah, they got Brian Thomas Jr. But he's just reliable, and
he's he's just their number one option there. He really has been. So I just for where you're
no,
getting
yeah.
Evan Ingram, it's honestly kind of crazy how low you're getting him. To be fair, I think it's a crazy good value for potential 8th round pick.
Oh yeah, definitely. And with my guy, I mean, someone who's going typically about a round earlier, depending on who you're drafting with, like we always say. But Dalton Kincaid for me,
Mm-hmm.
you just look at, yeah, we kind of, I guess you could say, knocked Josh Allen a little bit earlier in the episode, but it is just a reality. It's really hard when you have a guy being drafted as the number 1 overall quarterback when he lost his 2
Mm-hmm.
top options. Like his wide receiver 1 and 2 are gone. But with that comes the opportunity for Dalton Kincaid.
Yeah.
All those vacated targets have to go somewhere. They, uh, I just, this really could be such a monster season for Dalton Kincaid. And while
Yeah.
I do love Trey McBride and is someone that, it's like for me, the way I look at the tight ends this year, just being honest, is 5, 6, and 7 are the rounds where it's like if I could get Trey McBride round 5, Dalton Kincaid round 6, or Evan Ingram round 7 or 8.
Yeah.
After that, I'm trying to get Jake Ferguson, but those are like my 3 like guys kind of in that order. And the first, I mean, all 3 of them realistically could finish as top 5, top 3. Evan Ingram could, I mean, it's harder to say because Evan Ingram's not really a touchdown guy that he could finish as the number
Mm-hmm.
1 tight end. But I mean, there's a path for it. But there's very realistic paths
Oh
for
yeah.
both Dalton Kincaid and Trey McBride. And that's for me why just in an offense we're projecting to be good in the Buffalo Bills, I mean, those targets have to go somewhere. And
Yeah.
I just think Dalton Kincaid is going to be excellent.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. And speaking of guys that a lot of people think are going to be excellent, the guy people have hyped up every single season since he's came into the NFL, my bust for this year is going to have to be Kyle Pitts. And it is strictly because he's being drafted ahead of, in a lot of leagues, of guys like Evan Ingram, George Kittle, just guys we know are going to get the crazy volume. Now he finally has a quarterback, but everyone's talking about it's Bijan's breakout season. It has to be. The Falcons may be a run first offense. Kyle Pitts could have a solid season, but you have guys that just seem to have passed him up in the fantasy realm. You have Sam Laporta emerging, Dalton Kincaid, Trey McBride, and then you have the guys that have been holding their spots. You have Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews. I just don't think Kyle Pitts' upside, I don't want to gamble it again. I'd rather wait a season, have him do really good, and then we say, okay, we can trust Kyle Pitts, compared to we've said this is going to be the year for him 3-4 years in a row, and we're wrong again. I don't want to take that gamble when I can get someone safe like an Evan Engram that we know is going to be involved in the offense. Just make someone else take the risk one time. Don't be the guy to do it.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And for me, as much as it pains me to say, I got to go with Mark Andrews. And I don't think that Mark Andrews is going to be a bust necessarily. I don't really even think he was going to finish outside of the top 5 tight ends if he has a healthy season. I just think like it's where he's going, where I've seen him go in a lot of drafts. Is
Mm-hmm.
in a lot of drafts he goes as the tight end 3. And for a lot of them, it's Trey McBride, which is where kind of I have them ranked. I have it, Travis Kelce, Sam Laporta, Trey McBride. And then for me, it's Dalton Kincaid and then Mark Andrews. So for that reason, just for as often as I've seen Mark Andrews going a lot higher, it's just where I can get Kincaid. And
Mm-hmm.
number one, I'd rather get McBride. Number two, like I said, just where I can get Kincaid a little bit later, get a little bit more value in the running back or wide receiver position rather than getting Mark Andrews. And it's just, yes, we know he's been injured. He hasn't played the full season the last couple of years. Truly unfortunate injuries, but
Yeah.
it is what it is. And, we move on and move forward. But that's just where I'm at with Mark Andrews. Still have him as a top 5 tight end. It's just the two that are going a little bit later, I do have ranked higher than him. So
Yeah. No,
that's just my thing with him this year.
and that's a big thing when we're talking about these busts. It's like Schiff's mentioned. If you can wait a round and a half, possibly 2 rounds, and get Kincaid
Yeah.
and get another, instead of Mark Andrews, you're getting another wide receiver 2 or your RB 2 and filling those slots and getting a tight end a couple rounds later that can give you very similar production and potentially be a bit healthier through the year. It just can be a smarter move in the long haul. And our fantasy MVPs, the surprise of the end of the season. I'm going to go another incredibly hot take, but I was high on the Jets this past season, and then of course Aaron Rodgers runs out with the American flag and goes down after one play.
Oh man.
That's got to be one of the most unfortunate things it was bad. But my potential fantasy MVP is going to be Garrett Wilson. He had 168 targets this past season, which was the 4th most in the NFL behind only Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, and CeeDee Lamb. And he's the only one in the top 12 targets in the NFL that finished below 100 receptions. And I promise you, most of those were not Garrett Wilson's fault. He also only finished with 3 touchdowns. He now has Aaron Rodgers, who is an older quarterback coming off a very serious injury. But from everything I've seen, to be fair also, Aaron Rodgers had literally 365 days to get ready. It's not like he got hurt week 10 and he's like, trying to rush back from this injury. He's old, but he's had plenty of time to come back. And if Aaron Rodgers can come back in any capacity, he's going to be better than what Garrett Wilson has ever had as his quarterback. And he's someone that if you can get and potentially, you get him early second round, you pair him with a AJ Brown or someone of that caliber, it can be a scary duo to have. But I can honestly see Garrett Wilson as my dark horse MVP finish.
Yeah, I could see the path for it. And for this one, I was really confident in my guy. And I still am. He's a solid runner up. But as me and Derek did a little bit of talking after, did a little more thinking. So my runner up, I'll say, is Cooper Kupp.
Mm-hmm.
Where he's going in like either, 3rd or 4th round, depending on who you're drafting with. Again, everything is dependent on that. But I just love the value there.
Mm-hmm.
He's still Cooper Kupp. I still think he can finish as a top 5 wide receiver.
Absolutely.
But my fantasy MVP, and this is strictly based on the fact that he's not in contention for being the number 1 overall pick.
Yeah.
The fact that I get to think about taking him at 5 overall. is Justin Jefferson.
Yeah.
Um, we've done a lot of talking about it, and I've done a lot of thinking about it. And it's like if you put the ball in that guy's catch radius, he's gonna come down with it.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's like, you might think they might not be in the position to score a lot of points. They're gonna have to throw the ball a lot. Their defense isn't that great.
And they're going to be losing.
They're gonna be losing games.
Yeah.
They do not have TJ Hawkinson. Jordan Addison has been going through the ringer.
Yes.
I mean, he's the best wide receiver in football.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is one where we talked about the Kyron thing and with the punt returning news, whether, you look back and that's something like, damn, I really wish I didn't overthink it. I truly think Justin Jefferson is going to be the biggest one of all. Like, we're looking back like, I really wish I didn't overthink it, and I just picked Jettas.
Yeah.
So I'm planting my flag. In our draft tomorrow, I will be selecting him.
I'll remember you said that.
Overall.
I'm going to hold that to
No,
you.
I'm planting my
hold
flag.
you
You
to
can
it.
clip it. You can clip it.
It's on there.
You can clip it.
It's on there. You heard it here first. That's a crazy.
Jefferson,
I did not
overall.
know that. I did not know that until this second.
We're planning. I mean, I'm picking him as my fantasy MVP. How can I not? I would
That's
be a
fair.
fraud. I would be a fraud. I can't do the show like that. So
I respect that.
Tomorrow, that's what we're doing. Hey, if it burns me, it burns me. But I just don't believe that I could get burned by Justin Jefferson. In the he played 10 games last season, had over 1,000 yards. Meaning he averaged over 100 yards a game. So that's at the very least. He's averaging like 15 fantasy points a game in a PPR setting. Granted, you want like 18, 20 out of, but it's like at worst, if that's what I'm getting at worst, I'll take it. Because last year at the 1-2 turn, I took Devontae Adams. There were games you saw he was giving me 1.2. Granted, later in the season, it went up. But I just know Justin Jefferson is not going to burn me. Same way I think of Amon-Ra St. Brown, but Justin Jefferson's the best wide receiver in the NFL. So,
and just to back you up a little bit, even more on it. Yeah, Justin Jefferson played 10 games, finished 19th in the NFL in receiving yards. In only 10 games, he had more yards than Devonta Smith, D-Hop, Chris Godwin, George Kittle, Calvin Ridley. The next closest, with games played similar, Christian Kirk in 12 games with 787. In the top 50, that's the next closest. And Justin Jefferson played 10 games and had 1,074 yards. So there is a lot of merit. And that's with Nick Mullins, Jaron Hall, Josh Dobbs. Right? Yeah. Josh Dobbs for a couple games.
It's like, dog, we knock Sam Darnold, but he played a little bit in that game against the Ravens on Christmas. I remember watching him. And granted, he threw an interception like in the end zone, but I just really like I said, it just comes a point where you can't overthink it too much. This guy's the best in the league, and I do believe he will finish as a top 5 wide receiver.
No,
and just especially like, I think as we were talking about, as it was coming down to the start of the season, this BS with Jamar Chase is, because he was a guy like, I haven't had Jamar Chase on one of my fantasy teams before, so I was really like looking forward to picking him. Zach Taylor said he might not even play week 1. So it's like, okay, this is a concern. And then it's like, I just look to the guy who has been there the entire offseason, practicing, been with his team on the field.
Yeah.
It's Jettas. So.
Yeah. I like that. And it's locked in.
There we go.
I'm putting the name on the board.
Do it.
I'm putting it on the board.
Hey, we said we were going spicy. We had to go spicy. We had to do it for the show. We'll post it on here to let you guys know. We'll post our draft board, show you guys how we ended up picking. We'll do like a little little vlog after the draft, just to show you guys the draft board, what we kind of think about our teams, talk to some of the guys in the draft, see what they think about their team, so on
Yeah.
and so forth. Just a little something special for you guys, since this is our last year. We didn't get around to doing this pre-draft, so it's kind of a new experience for us. And as we're going, we'll get more and more stuff for you guys. But yeah, pretty excited about this.
Yeah. No, it's gonna be a fun one.
Yeah, we're drafting in less than 24 hours.
That is true. We'll
Very
be in the
much
heat
looking
of
forward
battle
to
this
it.
time tomorrow.
Yes, we will. And Derek and I just so happened to draft 5 and 6. I draft 5, Derek drafts 6. So we are back to back.
Yeah. It'll be
So
a
it's gonna be
it'll be an interesting one. We'll see how it goes. But go ahead, man. Get us out of here.
for the second but first official time
Mm-hmm.
this year. Um, Welcome back, guys. Thank you once again. This is our second season doing this. Hopefully, we're able to improve more and more for you guys each time. But come back the next time, take more reps with the first team.
Yes, sir.